And then just give me the heads up, Peter, when we can get started.
We are recording. You're good to go.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone, and thanks to another session where during a pandemic we can all get together online at least. And today's topic is about building better solutions for remote education, a topic that's near and dear to my heart with 3 kids in school, all affected by the pandemic, like I'm sure many of your kids, and definitely the teachers that we have as our panelist members today. And so with that, let me quickly introduce myself and the panelists that we have on the line. So I'm Jeff Yee. I'm the VP of Innovation and Partnerships at ZTE. I'll be the moderator for today's discussion. And we have 4 teachers from across the country today, from Florida all the way to Hawaii. So Andrea Love from Florida, Jason Ewing from California, Kim Koopman from Hawaii, and lastly, Tina Lee from Texas. And what we'll be doing today is asking questions directly from educators about what happened in the spring as we all kind of responded quickly to the pandemic. And then more importantly, what have we learned from it and what can we do to improve it in the fall when kids return back? Some might be in school and some might still be at home learning remotely. So that's the questions that we will be asking. The hope here is that we, as in the technology industry, not only ZTE, but our partners, software providers, hardware providers, even wireless carriers that we work with, that we can take this information and help to build better solutions. So that's the idea of today's panel. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. And lastly, after I finish with my round of questions, we're going to open it up just for general comments from each of the panelists. And then if anyone from the audience has questions, first a reminder, please stay on topic. It should be related to education. And you can either ask it verbally, or if you prefer, you can use the chat window to send it to Peter, who is the host of the meeting. Okay, all right. And with that, a big hello again to everyone and our panelists. Thanks for joining. And I would like to start with our first question. Now, these questions will be actually to each of our panelists members, and you know, feel free to answer in any order. For this first one, maybe I'll just call on you in individual order, but there's no way that we have to run this format, so feel free to jump in at any time. But maybe we'll start first with Andrea, just to kind of kick this off. So Andrea, when did you implement remote learning solutions? And could you please tell us about your experience and the solutions that you used?
Well, we officially started March 31st. We got the news of the shutdown the first, when we were actually on spring break. So then we were told that we got the following week to do online training for Google Suite, for a couple other programs that we had. And then the 30th, we went back, we contacted all of our parents, got our materials, and then we had 2 days where they had to come and pick their materials. And they did have the option to use workbooks if they weren't comfortable with using Chromebooks. At our school, we're fortunate we have a 1-to-1 Chromebook student ratio from pre-K through 5th. So all they had to do was fill out responsibility contracts and they were good to go. We also, in our district, we have a program called iReady, and I know it's in several other states as well. And what it is it has a component for reading and a component for math, and it'll do a diagnostic based on where that child is at, and it'll give them lessons targeting all the domains in that area where that child is at, and they can progress as much as they want, you know, as far as they can go. And we also have the ability to assign specific lessons to go back and set them. If they are not getting area, we can shut a domain off. And that and a component that we had called Myon, which is a database of almost 10,000 online books that they could take accelerated reader quizzes, nonfiction titles, fiction titles, so they could get their reading component in. And that's for our district. went heavily into that because you could have that individualized learning daily. And we expected the students to do 45 minutes in reading and 45 minutes in math daily. Now, we did do, we used the Google Hangout, the Google Meets to do targeted instruction for groups, you know, with the lower groups, for, you know, helping them out with the skills that they were needing, as well as the higher ones. And you had the choice to initially assign the online components of your curriculum, but a couple of weeks in, our superintendent said, we need to stop that. There's so much pressure on the parents. So many of them were losing their jobs. It was becoming overwhelming. So we were stressed with just, you know, make it easier for them. And so they really wanted us to heavily just rely on that iReady, because it's a standard-based learning customized to each student. And we could see what they were doing, and we could walk them through if there was a problem.
Okay. All right, great, thank you. This first one, I'm just gonna go alphabetically. That might be easiest. I won't be doing the same the second question. But go ahead, Jason, I think you would be next. Same question to you.
A lot of what Andrea said applies to ourselves as well here in Dublin, but we started a couple of weeks earlier. I want to say it was like March 16th-ish in there, and we were 3 weeks out to spring break. And so the idea was that we were going to have the 3 weeks of remote learning spring break and then possibly come back. That was the initial idea. And then when things started to go really awry, we realized that we were in this for the long haul. We, across the board in our school, I believe through the grade levels, everyone was doing something different. It was very, it was different across grade levels. It was different for teachers within the same grade levels, what they were using. Obviously, we were using our benchmark for our ELA. We have the Renaissance Learner and Accelerated Reader that were opened up to kids to take quizzes at home to kind of track their independent reading. I used Google Classroom for my students and for them to turn in assignments through there. And I also used ReadWorks and Newsella that went directly with the Google Classroom for reading. And for math, we still use our Pearson account, and the kids were able to access that at home, and they would take the topic test. We were down to just a few, and then the end of the year 5th grade test as well. I will say, as a parent of 3 kids at home, trying to keep them going, and they range from 8th grade to 1st grade, it was extremely difficult to keep them going, and also to keep my classroom running as best as possible in the remote style. And so I think Andrea alluded to it, is like our district really said to us, this, you know, allow kids and families to move at the pace that they can and do what they can. We went to, you know, credit, no credit pass, you know, as long as they were giving some effort and motivation to show up for our meetings and get the majority of their work done. And most of my students were able to do that. But I got to say, I had the feeling like putting it all together, you know, and I think many schools suffered this. It was just like, it happened so quickly. And then you're trying to put it together and you want to give, you know, the same type of commitment to every grade level and every class. It was difficult the way that it happened.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Jason. Kim, you're next. Same question.
Okay, so we hit spring break on March 13th and then went off to spring break not realizing we weren't going to come back. And then we were told that the kids would have an extra week of spring break, and that was the week we had to prepare. So we really, you know, put in high gear and tried to get ready. We are a one-to-one school, so all of our students have Chromebooks and they take them home regular. They have them for their 4 years. It's fortunate for us. We did face some problems with some students not being able to have internet access, so we tried to solve that in time, but it took us a while. So they didn't get the hotspots, and you know, like by the time we were up and ready to do school. But we did put together, you know, we're using Google Classroom, of course, and we put together a database of resources, tried to give everybody as much as possible to work with. Our math is online for at least our lower level math. So algebra, geometry, algebra 2 already has an online program they use. We grabbed a science online program that we were familiar with for our 9th and 10th grade science, but pretty much everybody, we just trained them on like ways to do video lecture and video, stuff like that, and try to, get them ready for it. One of the things that we as a state then struggled with, like some of you are talking about, is the grading issue and them being able to keep up and all of that kind of stuff. And so initially there was this uncertainty about grades. So kids assumed they were getting graded. So they would log on and they would do our stuff and everything was going pretty well. But then our superintendent said statewide there would be no grading, grades would end at third quarter. And so then it became sort of this optional, statewide optional thing. And she did it because, of course, in Hawaii, we have a lot of people that live in remote areas where even a hotspot doesn't reach. So she couldn't ensure that all kids were having access at all. And then, of course, those kids that didn't have internet, didn't have computers, because we are a state system, right? All under one system, we're not districts. So she had to ensure that all could get it. So we actually stopped grading, which then, of course, at the high school level, kids, it became optional. So kids stopped coming at all and doing any of it. Elementary had a little bit better with their kids, with their little like Zoom meetings and stuff. I know some families struggled because kids were supposed to be on at the same time and they only had one device. So like, the timing was an issue. The superintendent, of course, asked us just to be really flexible and give options. And so, as we're looking to the next stage, those are all things we're trying to solve the best that we can. And of course, figure out ways that we can ensure everybody can do stuff, but then also grade and assess them. So yeah,
okay.
We're waiting for those
Yeah,
decisions.
quick me, probably others that might be listening. A one-to-one school, can you describe what that is?
So all of our students at their freshman year, they sign out a Chromebook and it's theirs for their 4 years. So they all have the device that they take home. And so we already have like online things that we do with them for homework and things like that. And so we're kind of unusual in Hawaii. There aren't many one-to-one schools. We took it on early. And so we were really fortunate. I know for schools that don't have devices like that, they had to run off packets. And then of course, at the high school level, right, they were getting packets of something science, something English, something math, but it wasn't the classes they were in necessarily. So that was a struggle, but like, we're really fortunate that we have this, the one-to-one. I know somebody else said that they have enough Chromebooks, they were able to give them out. Our kids are already used to them. They use them in their everyday classes. So they were just bringing, they had them, they brought them home and, for spring break anyway. So we didn't have to do a lot of troubleshooting. But a lot of my friends at other schools here had a lot more problems. So,
okay, all right.
We're rare. We're rare in Hawaii, so.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Kim. And Kim's the one from Hawaii, but you wouldn't know it because Tina's got the background with the beach. But
Yeah, sorry.
Whoops.
That's cool.
All right, so Tina, same question then for you.
So we also started our remote learning after. It seems like we also have 2 weeks of spring break, and then after that we started our remote learning. And of course, I work at a pretty small school district, so the superintendent reacted pretty quickly, and then also of course also with all the principals. So to me, it's because our principals, they are so professional that they know they right away gave out guidelines. And then because I work at high school, they gave all the teachers saying that each student, each subject, we are only allowed to give up to 45 minutes learning per week. So it's not really a lot because we also sort of, we don't want to overwhelm the parents. And of course the devices, I believe our school district, just like my kids' school district, they also gave out a survey and asked what we need, and then And so if we need Chromebook, you can just go, pick up from the school. So that part, we just have no problem with the devices. And then, of course, we will meet, and basically our curriculum, I designed it, and I posted on Google Classroom. So basically, that's the platform we use. And because I work for a world language department, and then we sometimes use flip grid. I'm sure you also heard of that too. So we use that, and then if students want to have some back and forth communication, they also can use that grid. So our whole plan is that if we can make our curriculum very clear, then students should not, they won't be need to really ask teachers help. And of course, every day we also have, as a teacher, we need to use Zoom as our office hour. The student, if they have questions, they can come talk to us, but basically they don't have to because, since the curriculum is so clear. And that's it.
Okay, thanks, Tina. Okay, now let's dive into a little more of the issues with the next question. Now, I've heard some of this might have already been answered by some of you. That's the previous one, but let's get into a little bit more detail. And there's we won't call alphabetical order, so just feel free to jump in. This one is about access to the equipment that's needed, and that could be access to the internet, to hardware like Chromebooks that was mentioned, to software like Google Classroom. I think Zoom was mentioned. But the question here is, did all the students have access to the appropriate things? And then if so, or if not, sorry, specifically what was given out to kids? And for this answer, it does not have to necessarily be just your classroom, since I know you're within a circle within your school or even your district. I'm curious just to get the information about just the broader community, what you saw was the issues in getting the tools that are necessary for kids to learn remotely. So who wants to start with this question?
Well, I'll start, Jeff. Like I said, with our district, it's beginning in 3rd grade on, every student has their Chromebook, but we, like I said, several schools like mine are fortunate enough to have them for pre-K through 2nd grade. So, and they were familiar with using them in the classroom. So that was good. They weren't learning something new. What our district did was provide free internet access. However, it wasn't the strongest bandwidth, and it went down quite often. I did have, there were, most of our students, I would say at least 90% went with a Chromebook and to do everything online. The rest of them did choose to get workbooks and packets, just depending, even though free internet access was available. So that was our biggest thing, is the internet going down and they couldn't complete it. And kind of like, once they all were really good in the beginning to do it, and then once our superintendent said, basically, you're going to give them all they're all going to pass. 4th grade doesn't matter, 4th quarter doesn't matter. Then you saw the slope on there. And then once we were going to the end of April originally, and then hopefully go back to school for May. But once they found out, parents found out school was shut down for good for the rest of the year, then you saw a huge slump off as parents were overwhelmed, because I talked with each parent a couple times a week, and they were overwhelmed with it. Kids were tired, and that was our biggest problem. But if they had had more, a more dependable internet, I believe it would have been easier.
Yeah, okay. Good, thanks, Andrea.
Yeah, I had a lot of the same issues with the connectivity, and did a lot of project learning with the kids. And in order for them to present, they would come on the Zoom meetings, whatnot, and then a lot of their connections would just freeze, or the audio was off, or both the audio and the video was off. And it made it rather difficult to do those kind of project-based learning presentations for the group who did show up for our Zoom meetings. In our district, in our school, I had to hand out one family had to go through the process of getting a Chromebook. And in the other fifth grade classrooms, it was just a handful of kids, not a lot. Most kids had access. But, you know, myself and then another teacher I talked to today about this, I told her what was going on. She said, you know, one of the biggest issues is you got 3 kids and then parents are working from home now and people have got meetings all at the same time. And like you said, the bandwidth is just not enough to keep it flowing as smooth as you would hope. And yeah, you know, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no, I run into that same situation. I know 3 kids all trying to get online and I'm trying to work at the same time. Even if everyone has a device in the internet, it just slows down. I hear you. All right, who else wants to tackle that question?
I mean, I can just reiterate a lot of what both of you guys have said too. We were lucky, we did have all of our kids with Chromebooks, but we did have families that struggled with that same thing. Like they didn't have enough devices even, and kids were supposed to be online at 10 a.m., but 3 of them were supposed to be online at 10 a.m. And so then there was that, you know, like push of who gets to have it. And then we even had teachers that were struggling with the same thing. So like if they all of a sudden went down, right, the kids are now in one of these Zoom calls by themselves and the teacher ends up getting kicked out somehow or things, you know, like, because we used a lot of Google Meet because Zoom was, the DOE here in Hawaii decided Zoom wasn't safe. So because of all those Zoom things that were happening with like Zoom crashers. So for a while we couldn't use Zoom. So in Google Meets, like they're left in there by themselves. So I know we had some of that, those problems with teachers, also their bandwidth going crazy and, you know, freezing or whatever. So it was that was a struggle. And then of course, like I said before, we had problems with people that are in remote areas that can't access any kind of internet whatsoever. So some of our students were driving like in closer, like their families would have to drive them closer to school so they could catch the Wi-Fi at school, even though they couldn't be on campus because where they are, we couldn't even get them a free hotspot. So
yeah, what percentage, you know, the kids would have been in that situation?
So in my personal school, we had like, we could count it on 2 hands how many kids had problems, but some of our neighboring schools had like maybe up in the 30% range even of kids that struggled with access. So, and then out on the west side, of course, of our island, there was a lot of issue with them and that same problem. So we did in Hawaii, Spectrum offered free internet to our all students, so that, but they still had to come out. And it was limited through the school year. So I don't know if they're going to do that again for us, but they did offer to come out and give people free access. I don't know how good the access was.
Okay.
So.
All right, thanks, Kim. Tina, how about you on this question?
Not really. It's like, it seems like, you know, my students or even my kids and their friends, we just don't have any hardware or software issues. So
how about bandwidth issues? If you had multiple kids at home, did you see slow connections?
No, because we have 5G, so it's different.
Okay, thanks, Tina. So let me move on to the next question then. Again, I feeling that some of this was already answered because I heard Google Meet and Google Classroom, heard Zoom. But I just want to get an idea of the types of solutions that were already being used. So this will help to kind of narrow our focus as we talk to different companies and partnerships. So it doesn't necessarily have to be related to the 3 bullet points that you see on here, video conferencing, learning management, or even device management. But we'll maybe start first with those and then just describe any other tools that your school is using or maybe more importantly, planning to use maybe in the fall.
Our school, I was just going back and reading the email that was sent out last week about different choices that are coming up, a hybrid model or a choice model for next year. And then they started talking about getting one learning management system, trying to get a new platform. One was Schoology, and then Canvas as a learning management system to have access to all those different, you know, multiple sites on one platform, because some kids and families were saying it was rather difficult to keep track of where they needed to go, where they could find this, where they could find that. And so our district is looking into these 2. That's as far as I know from the email that was sent out. But for me, I used the Zoom meetings and Google Classroom. The kids were already using it through when we were in school. And so it was an easy transition for them when we went to the remote learning. But all my video conferencing was done through Zoom. I played around a little bit with that. Was it WebEx, I think? But
Yeah, well, this is another one, yes.
I didn't really like that one. So Zoom was the one I went with.
Okay, good. But you were able to make the individual choice. So, you know, another teacher in the same school could have chosen a different solution like WebEx then.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right. All right, who wants to tackle this question next?
Well, at my school, we have on our district website, once they log in, there's a core app dashboard, and all their different platforms where they need to go is all right there. So they can click on iReady, click on Mayan, they can click on Study Island, wherever it is, it's all linked from that one page. So they only had to have one place to go to. We used Google Classroom and Google Meet. We were not allowed to use Zoom because of the break-ins and, you know, people hacking it and stuff. We also were given a system called GoGuardian, which allows us to link up with the Chromebooks, and we can see what each student is doing at any given time and where they've been on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
If they're playing around somewhere, or if they're spending enough time. And that really helped, because you could see their screen in live time and send them a message. Not that my kindergartners could read it, but that was especially helpful with the older grades. You know, get back to work, or if you see they're struggling, you could encourage them and things that way. And I know that we're planning on continuing to use the GoGuardian if we have to do any of that remote learning, as well as the Google Classroom and Google Meets.
Now, a quick question on GoGuardian, does that just allow you to view what they're doing, or can you also restrict certain websites?
You can restrict.
I haven't gotten,
okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
GoGuardian only can apply on those Chromebooks. So I know lower grade level teachers, they use GoGuardian a lot, especially like my kids when they use their school devices, and they are not allowed to, use YouTube at all, because the teacher, they put on restrictions already. So it's pretty cool. And in my school district we use Zoom, and then before we started all the Zoom remote learning, our school district has assigned us the free Zoom accounts already. So we have unlimited, like no time limits at all. And of course, our school district, we use Google Classroom a lot. And I know other school districts that use like Canvas, like as Jason just mentioned. Mm-hmm. So there are all different type of learning management tools. Some school district people prefer this, and some school district prefer the other things.
Okay, yeah. Kim, how about you? What solutions?
So we used Google Meet, WebEx, and Zoom. We started off all of us doing Zoom, and then of course we got the note that we couldn't do it. So then we had to kind of retrain everybody. I mean, most of them aren't very hard, but and people preferred Google Meet. So we used that as our video, conferencing for faculty as well. And then some of the platforms we used, that we're looking toward is we use Google Classroom. We're already part of, we already all use that, but the state is looking into getting us all on Blackboard. So our online courses are already on Blackboard. So students in our high schools can do eSchool for a class. So they take a class period, they're in school, but their class is all online, and it's through Blackboard. So the course materials are there, and they can be edited by the teacher and all that kind of stuff. And so we're actually looking at offering Blackboard or Classroom to teachers. Unfortunately, right now, kids are gonna they already know how to use Classroom, they're gonna have to learn Blackboard. And there is like a tutorial they have to do. So there's a little anxiety around that, because, like they have to learn something new like that without us necessarily there, but we are looking at that, and they're looking at offering it to us, I think, for free. So I'm not sure how that's working out. We just started getting emails about it. So that's some of the stuff that we're looking at. And then we do control our Chromebooks a little bit, but we've been looking, and now might be the time, at some of those ways to watch what they're doing. We do have certain things that'll come out, but they can't watch what's on the screens yet. And I think that would help, obviously, with high school kids. We do know that, like, we need to make them turn on their cameras and stuff, because a lot of times they're logging in and they're just putting off their camera and then walking away and going to do whatever.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little, they seem minor, but if we're going to keep doing this, right, they're, you know, we need to kind of get teachers, because our teachers really are on a tech scale, right? Some of them are tech terrified all the way to really tech, you know, competent. So that's something that we're dealing with as well, is sometimes the kids are better at the tech than the teacher. So they know how to manipulate it really well. So.
But back to your camera one, because that seems like a very simple, you know, very easy thing to do to make sure that the kid is still watching and paying attention. Is that already exist then in the software that you're using today? Can you make sure that the camera's on?
I think that they can control that. I haven't played with that yet. It was something that came up as we kind of closed out our school year. But I know that, you know, like teachers they can ask them to turn on. If they don't, they could kick them out and then mark them sort of as absent from that conversation. I know my daughter's in college, and you know, so she was having to do online. They sent her home and all that kind of stuff. And professors started to make them turn on their cameras. You know, so, and my daughter, of course, goes to school on the East Coast. So she was like, it was like, you know, 4 a.m. She's like, I'm barely out of bed, like, you know, but, you know, so that's just, you know, some little things that, you know, I know that like a lot of these have lots of controls where we can, you know, kick them out pretty easily. And like waiting rooms, we had to teach our teachers how to do that too, like how to do a waiting room so that random kids weren't coming. You know, because we did have situations like that. A random kid from another school hopped into a class just to cause problems.
Okay. So. Okay, great. All right, well, thanks. Well, let's move on to the next question. I think we've got 2 more prepared ones to go, and then we'll open it up to just a general discussion. Now we'll kind of shift gears to the fall. Again, I think this is another one that, as you know, during the course of our discussion, some of this is already answered, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. So what changes are you either personally making yourself or your district, or in Kim's case, the state, planning to make in the fall that was different than the solution you used in the spring? Who wants to go first?
Well, I can tell you, everyone else seems to have had a lot of communication from the district about the fall. We've not had any. All we've had is it's going to start the same time, and it's going to look like it normally would look for a normal school year. It did say parents will have the option to do remote learning at home, but we don't know if it's going to be with us or with the free like homeschool situation that each state offers. We don't know. We've not been given really any concrete information yet for mine.
Okay. And when do you start school in the fall?
Teachers go back July 31st. So I think it's like August 6th, 7th, something like that.
Oh, you're not that far away. Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
We're going under the supposition that everything is like a normal school year for now.
Okay. Jason, it sounds like you're ready to go next.
Well, kind of a lot of what Andrea just said is, you know, not getting a lot of information exactly yet what it's going to look like for us specifically, you know, and it's understandable with how things are changing so rapidly these days. But, you know, personally, our team was a little disjointed last year. We had a big grade level 7 classes, and there was a lot of turnover. So that was one of the reasons why we were kind of all over the place. And next year we are just down to 4 classes, and our intentions are to get together obviously before this school year. And one of my kiddos was doing Flipgrid. I think Tina or Kim mentioned that, somebody. But I really enjoyed the way that was laid out for my first grader using Flipgrid. I don't know if it'll apply for the upper grades. I think it will. But I'd like to implement that. in the fall, and probably continue on with the Zoom meetings with a little bit more of, obviously we'll be a little bit more prepared for this one. We weren't really, totally prepared for what was coming at us in the spring. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting some specific information. Right now, I'm trying to take June off of thinking of all of this because for most of the time, but unfortunately, it always rears its head, and there's always a conversation about it with friends and colleagues, through text and email and whatnot.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah.
So we're waiting as well. We know that there's an important Board of Ed meeting tonight. I kind of know that from looking at the agenda that basically what they're going to be asking our superintendent is to have a plan by July 1st for schools. And then the schools have to come up with their specific plan by like July 6th. So we've already been sort of planning, kind of knowing what they're looking at, but not knowing which way they're going to go. And I think what's most likely is we're going to end up in a hybrid where kids come to school once or twice a week, and then they're online the other part. So we have half the number of students. In Hawaii, our class size is pretty big. So trying to socially distance 36 kids in one room is challenging. So that's our normal class size is about 32 to 36. Not in elementary, it's smaller for elementary, but still socially distancing, right? So it might be like alphabet, so our district might do like A to L, you come these days, and M to Z, you do these days. And then we have to have online supplements to go with it. So we'd be teaching half the number of students at a time. So doing our lesson twice. And then, so that's, everybody's kind of just on edge because we also go back, like I think Andrea does, we go back on, the kids start on August 6th or something like that. So we need to kind of know what to train teachers on. One thing that will continue for sure is we have a document library in Google with all the links for teachers. And then we have a student document library with links for them on resources and parents so that, they know what platforms. We're hoping to tidy it up and provide less, right? So last time, up until now, it's been sort of a free for all. And so we're going to try to limit it a little bit so that they're not having to learn so many things, sort of kind of take the ones that work the best. Because poor kids have 7 teachers and 7 different ways that they had to do online learning. So, we're hoping that we can tidy it up a bit. So we'll see. We're all anxious.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. How about you, Tina?
I don't know how to answer your question. I know that I just read the news. Our Texas governor is expecting the student will go back to school in person. Of course, some students can choose stay at home. So I just don't know how we are going to make that happen. Meaning a teacher has to do 2 jobs, because back then we have remote learning, and I like me and also the others, either Spanish teachers or French teachers, we all design our curriculums. So it takes quite a lot of time too. And right now, if we go back to work, how are we going to create another platform for students? I just don't see how it's gonna happen.
Well, that's a good point. So the hybrid model is actually much more difficult for all of you. To your point, Tina, 2 jobs, right? You have to have the online curriculum and the in-classroom curriculum.
Yeah.
Okay.
On that, Jeff, our district also was saying that they were trying to put cameras in every room, and so that the kids that were remotely learning would be online following the lesson that's happening in the classroom. Logistically, it sounds like it's just in the beginning.
Kick out again.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And
well, thanks for
on what Kim was saying in the beginning, how all this different software and different sites and different apps, it was like an overload in the beginning for teachers. Like you were just like, oh my gosh, which one do I want to grab? And finally, it was just like I got scared to open some emails. Our coaches were trying to be nice and help us out, but it was like, I think I got one. I think it's working right now. I'm cool.
Yeah.
I so agree. It was like, I've never learned so much in a short amount of time, I think. And then it was too much. I just had to stop.
Yeah.
And people were very generous. Companies were very generous, giving free resources and stuff. Another thing I did notice is that kids, so I would find cool online activities. I'm a science teacher, so like online lab kind of things. Some of my kids couldn't open them. And just because of, I'm not even sure why, but because most of them, they all have the same Chromebook, but sometimes, so we did have our tech people troubleshooting with them, but then there's that delay, right? So, because they have to get an appointment with tech and stuff, but there were so many people that reached out to schools. It was awesome and terrifying all at once.
Exactly.
Good. Well, let me move to the last question. Hopefully you'll think of this one as the fun question of the day. This is, really the point of this call is to try to develop something for all of you. And I guess if you were to make an ask of technology companies, i.e. if we could either do something personally, my company, or if we could share this video with different companies that you have in mind, here's the ask. If you were to ask those companies for the ideal solution in the fall for remote education, what would it look like? In any order, whoever wants to start first.
Vaccine and get back in the classroom.
Sorry, I missed that. What was that?
I said a vaccine and get back in the classroom.
Oh, you want a vaccine. All right, sure. But the question is remote education. I totally understand that point. But we have to plan for worst case scenarios. Right. Remote education.
I think one of those LMS, I'm not familiar with the two that our district put out there, but just like one site for the kids to be able to access everything, and parents to help them out. Fifth graders are pretty independent, but still need some guidance from their parents. So just one platform, it seems like our district over the last couple of years has been trying to really do that using the Clever platform to get kids into all different sites, but just one central site where the kids can be able to access everything that we're asking them to.
Okay. All right. Good centralization. I understand that one. All right. Who wants to go next?
I would say if companies are going to provide free internet, to make it a reasonable bandwidth to accommodate how many people are going to be on there, to make it, because a lot of our families did go with the free internet access because they didn't have it at home. So I would say that would be the big thing. And also our district purchased Google numbers for all the teachers, so they didn't have to give out their personal number if they weren't comfortable with that. That would be nice if the district didn't have to use their funds to do that in this kind of situation.
Okay. Good. Thanks.
I definitely agree with the phone number. We had some problems with that, like counselors and things like that. Trying to reach out to our students, didn't feel comfortable with their own phone number, but then they wouldn't answer either. Like, cause now somebody's calling and it says, it looks like it's some kind of fraud call. But so some kind of way where like it would show their name, but it wouldn't be their real phone number would help. So if they know the school is, somebody from the school is calling. I mean, we'll likely be in our classroom and can call from our rooms now, but, and I definitely agree with Jason. Something's got to simplify everything and be reliable, like not crashing and not, like, I can't tell you how many times I was in a meeting and like the leader of the meeting, right, their computer's going down, people are getting kicked out, things like that. And you're wasting like so much time on, a meeting that shouldn't have taken that long, or, or the kids getting frustrated because things are happening. So something simple, but like reliable.
Yeah.
One thing.
Yeah, understood. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Kim. How about you, Tina?
I agree with Kim. Just, provide something really simple but reliable. Like, I am pretty much happy with Zoom, but since they have reliable issue, and I know they put like password kind of restrictions. But however, I couldn't remember when they started to give out password, and then my student, they had to ask me that how am I gonna get in? It just sometimes they just cannot figure out. Like, just simply put password in and you wait for me. I will give you permission to join me. It seems like they don't know and they will panic. So just I would like to see, something can.
Oh, there's an example of bandwidth issues. We got a free stream. All right, it looks like she's frozen. All right, and then I'm going to move on. So, but before I move on to the open dialogue, one thing about this particular question is this should be an ongoing one. At any time, if you have any ideas for me, for ZTE, you can even consider me hopefully a way to reach out to other technology companies. This is an open one anytime. Feel free to give me your thoughts and ideas, whether it's today, the fall, or a year from now. Okay. Tina, can you hear us again now? No, we lost Tina. Okay, so with that ends the prepared questions. And what I'd like to do now is just open up to dialogue. We could either start with just general comments that any of you might have, or questions from the audience. Oh, there's Tina. You're back again. Hi, Tina.
Yeah, hi. I don't understand.
This is a good example of what your students are going through with bandwidth issues.
True.
Yeah, so before we go to Peter and to see if he's raised any questions, is there any concluding thoughts, any comments from any of you?
I just appreciate you putting this together, and hopefully some things benefit from this coming to the fall. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Peter, did you get any questions?
Not yet, just send in a chat to everyone, but I'll let you know if anyone writes in on a chat, but nothing yet.
Okay. All right, so while we're waiting maybe for questions to come in, I just want to reiterate for those that might have joined us online, we've got 4 teachers, very diverse parts of the country, and also age ranges as well, from kindergarten through high school, and from east all the way to the farthest west that you can go in the United States, from Florida to Hawaii. So I really want to thank everyone again for joining from our teacher panel. And it's an opportunity, if there is anyone from the audience to ask any questions, go ahead and do so now. You can either send those questions to Peter or unmute yourselves and ask it directly.
So Jeff, we have one question. Are schools talking about the digital divide?
Who wants to tackle that question?
By digital divide, are we talking about like those with access and those without?
Yeah, exactly. That's what the digital divide is. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can't really speak to that at our school. In our district, on the other side of our town, there's some issues with the digital divide, but I haven't heard an open discussion about it through our district, or possibly it was brought up in some board meetings that I didn't attend or hear, but I haven't been made aware of it in our district.
Maybe I can help to rephrase the question. And I know, Kim, you were talking about it a little bit earlier with some of your the students from other schools, not necessarily your school. But I guess, so digital divide is those, who have internet access, and actually in this case, let's just call it reliable internet access, because as we've learned, even people that have, a device at home, put multiple kids online, it's you still have freezing faces on Zoom. All right, so let me rephrase this. Do you fear that some kids are going to get left further behind because they don't have this access? And actually, I'm going to direct this one to Kim, since you might have direct knowledge.
I definitely, that's a huge discussion here. Some of you may not realize, but Hawaii is one school district for the whole state. I mean, we have these little mini districts, but really all of our funding is coming through the legislature. So all of our funding is it's very tied into politics as well. But it is a huge discussion, which is why we didn't do any grading fourth quarter, because we could not ensure that kids could access materials, as well as, we have, some school districts that have a high homeless population, things like that. And so it's definitely in discussion. And I know that in some of the hybrid models that are coming out for next school year, one of the biggest bullets on there is kids that are in these high needs kind of situations, whether it be socioeconomically or just access issues, that they need to be offered in person more than kids that can do online learning. And, of course, the logistics of that is quite crazy, right? Like, how do we offer them to be here more than other kids? You know, that's going to be hard, but it's a huge discussion. And that's really what I think our charge is going to be, is find a way to get those kids that don't have access, that can't do, and get them to school in person, because we know they can do that part as many times as possible at the sacrifice of other kids that can do online. You know, because of course we're going to be limited by number in the classroom. So I'm really interested, right? In a couple of weeks we'll know more, but the little things I've seen, I know that's a big issue. The other thing they're talking about is us having to assess them now coming in, because some kids did all of their online work fourth quarter, some didn't. And are they really ready in terms of grade level promotion? So, you know, talking about iReady and things like that for those elementary kids, and, you know, trying to figure out and then remediate them before all school gets going.
Yeah, okay, great, thanks.
Well, I know for my state, they at the state level, they need to come in with a little bit more resources, because our neighboring county, for the elementary schools, they were not able to send home any Chromebooks. It was all paper, pencil, workbook packets, just because they did not have the technological resources to send it. So how are those kids going to be compared to Escambia County? And that's not, you know, that's really not fair. And then from my perspective as a kindergarten teacher going in, like, if I have a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, they're not going to be able to operate the Chromebook on their own as much as a 3rd grader to get those basic skills. And what we mostly ran into is we had children not even starting anything online till 6, 7 o'clock at night, because they were in daycare that didn't, you know, wouldn't be willing to watch them with the Chromebooks, being responsible for that. So I would have to wait till their parents got home from work. And you can imagine starting at 7 o'clock, trying to do several hours worth when you're a young kid. They're not going to get as much out of it as someone who gets to stay at home all day with, you know, and has that, parents have the resources to at least one of them be there, or someone be there to help them.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I've got a question though, going back to the comment about the neighboring county, you know, packets of paper and pens. Now, was that lack of Chromebooks because of funding, or just because it happened so quickly they didn't have time to get all the resources?
That's just for their district. The Chromebooks they have, they don't have a one-to-one even close. So they couldn't send them home. They had the student workbooks and whatever packets their teachers could, you know, make for them.
Okay, great. Thanks everyone. Peter, was there any other questions from the audience?
Yes, we have 2 more questions. The first is, do you think students learned at the same level as they did in school? I think it's kind of, did they learn at the same level being you know, remote versus being in person in school? And if there's a difference, what do you think made that difference or gap?
Well, I can speak for my kids. They did not do as well as they would with the teacher, number one being their age, but also when we had the Google Meets, you could see older siblings, teenagers fighting in the background, TVs blaring, someone was on drums in another room. So if that's going on when they know there's a meet with the teacher, what's going on when they're expected, you know, to learn and do it independently? So being able to focus their attention was a huge issue.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Tina, looked like you had something to say.
What's that?
Oh, go ahead, Jason, you go first. It looked like Tina was about to say something earlier, but go ahead, Jason.
Okay, sorry, Tina. I would absolutely say that no, they did not learn. Speaking for my kids and from the classroom, as opposed, you know, compared to being in the classroom, it's such a social dynamic for the kids to be able to be together, work together, small group, bounce things off each other and these ideas, and it's just not our reality anymore. But I think there's a huge gap between the learning that goes on within the classroom and remotely.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
So Okay, so I know my school, they try to simplify the whole learning target. So as my department, every week we will talk about what our learning target is. So I can also answer the last question, how we do to make our class more creative and make students more engaging. So we set up learning target, we will have, each week we have different mode. So learning language sometimes, this week we might do interactive, the other week we will do interpersonal or presentational. So do different mode to create different activities. However, I can just speak for my school districts. I know because my school district is so wealthy. I mean, wealthy is not the school district itself, it's meaning the whole families. They are all super wealthy. So what am I going to say? I kind of lost. So I know that after we simplify our learning target and set up our goal, we started creating it. However, in my own subject, I do not simplify anything at all. And so I create all what I wanted to learn. I realized I noticed my student will learn better through remote learning because I record and log everything on internet. And they can just go back and review and listen to the audio clip I gave to them. To me, I think they learn better. However, it also depends on each individual. I still have some students, they just don't want to turn in homework. So meaning they don't even learn at all. Then they will be behind. And at that time, our goal is I try to do my best to help them to pass. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, thanks much.
I would like to add to that one just too, because I think it's important for you guys in tech, where this whole online learning is really created for teachers, right? So many teachers are trying to do what they would have done in a classroom online, as opposed to we have to do things totally different for it to be successful. When we try to do what we do in class online, we've created a cheating culture, basically. Kids get together, they're great at searching up answers, they're great, right? Like, so we have tons of teachers that are trying to give their regular tests online. College, I saw this all the way through college, and the kids, they know how to use technology enough, they're just cheating their way through. And so really what we need to do, and I know this isn't, you guys are designing tech products, but we need to find ways to assess kids that are different than what we've done, because just taking what we do in the classroom and putting it online doesn't work. Like it's just not. And that's the learning curve for a teacher. How do we get, how do we change? How do we, I don't think we know. So there's a big learning curve ahead of us.
Yeah, well, thanks. Actually, that's probably a great place to stop. Those are concluding remarks, which since we're at the top of the hour, Peter, I don't think we'll have enough time for more questions because, thanks to our panelists here, I did say we would take no more than an hour of their time. But Kim, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, we do all have to learn differently as we approach the fall semester here. And I'm going to reiterate, if there's any other thoughts you have at any time, please feel free to reach out to me. I would like to thank everyone again on this call. We do have a gift for you. We'll get out into the mail. Tina, I think I need your address so we can get that to you. But we're very sincerely appreciative of the time that you spent today for helping to educate us. And my hope is that we can find solutions. I think it's difficult, in a matter of weeks, in some cases for schools, but we're going to see what we can do to put together a better fall for the kids.
Okay.
All right, with that,
Thank
I'd like
you.
to.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks
Nice
also,
to meet
Peter.
everybody.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye, everyone, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks.
Bye, all.
Bye.